Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Say What podcast. My name is Hannah, and on this podcast, we talk about things that people don't want to say out loud. And if you are a fan of this podcast and you love talking about marriage, sex, purity culture, girly teens, mom things, if you love all of that, if you could just leave me a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube, that would be so helpful. I'm so close to my YouTube goal, which was to get 100 followers, and then obviously I have other goals after that, or 100 subscribers. But I wanted to hit the 100 mark, and we're so close. And so if you could just do that, that would be great. Now that is out of the way, we can really talk about what I'm super excited to talk about today, which is I have a guest on the podcast. Amanda Aanestad is here with us. Amanda, say hi.
Hi.
I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Amanda is actually with the Instagram account, The Victory Collective, which is so great. They talk a lot about porn, and I don't even remember. We've been following each other on Instagram for a long time. I don't remember when I feel like I first saw one of your posts on an explore page maybe or something. I don't remember, but we've been following each other for a really long time.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, which is so fun. And the content that you and Katie put out there is just so good. And I love all the resources that you give for women who are struggling with porn, and just how much it's removing shame from their lives and just giving women a place to know that others are going through this, they're not alone, and just resources to overcoming this addiction. It's huge. And the work that you're doing is so important. It's so important because so many women struggle with porn, and it's so not talked about, which we will get to in the episode. It's so not talked about with it being a woman's struggle as well. I think it's still very much heavily this is just something that guys struggle with. And so it's so important for women to have a space that you have created, which is so incredible. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's so important. It's so important. And I'm so glad that we get to chat today.
Yeah. No, I'm super excited. I love your podcast. Like you said, we've been following each other for a long time, and I feel like probably when we first started the Instagram account, I just started following just as many people in this space as possible.
Yeah.
So it's probably just been since the beginning.
Yeah, I really think so. Yeah, definitely. It's so fun. Thank you so much for loving the podcast. I'm so glad you're here. So why don't you just tell us about yourself, who you are, what you do, just the 30,000 foot view of Amanda.
Yeah. My name is Amanda. I am from Virginia, but my husband is an Air Force pilot. So
Oh, wow.
we've been, our last, when we first got married, we lived in Texas. And in October, we moved here to North Carolina. So we're kind of
Wait,
hopping all over the
I
place.
didn't know that we were in the same place.
Are you also in North
I'm
Carolina?
in North Carolina. Oh my gosh,
Where?
we can cut this out if you want, but where are you at in North Carolina?
I'm in Goldsboro.
I don't know where that's
Where are
at.
you in
I'm in
Virginia?
Durham.
Okay. Goldsboro is like an hour from Raleigh, like an
Oh my
hour
god,
east of Raleigh.
we're so close. Okay,
So close. We could have got.
we have to get together. No, I'm so serious. Oh my god, we have to hang out. This is the best news I've ever heard in my life. Oh my gosh, especially because we have babies the same age.
Yes.
This is
I literally had no
incredible.
idea. Yeah, we are. No, it's such an easy drive to Raleigh, and
Yeah.
it's teeny tiny little farm town because it's an
Uh-huh.
Air Force town, and that's never a
Yeah.
big
No,
city
I'm
or.
literally right between Durham and Raleigh,
Oh my
dead center
gosh,
between Durham and Raleigh. So
that's
we're
awesome.
probably less than an hour apart.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, best news. We can the podcast
Yeah.
listeners are okay, move on. I'm just so excited to have a friend close now. Oh my
That's
gosh. Okay, we will definitely text about this
love
later.
that.
But
Yes.
okay, so
Okay.
now you're in North Carolina. That's
So
great.
North Carolina, now that we got
Mhm.
that settled, yeah, North Carolina, it's been great. Love it.
Mhm.
So much more than Texas.
Okay,
And
yeah.
yeah, so my husband is currently in training for the next plane that he got. And
Okay.
we had a little boy in July, so he's
Oh,
almost a year old, which is insane.
yeah.
I'm not emotionally prepared for that, but here we
Truly.
go.
Yep.
He's the best. His name is Mason.
Oh, I love the name
And
Mason so much. I just
thanks.
think it's the cutest little name. It's so cute.
Thanks. We had a hard time naming. We don't agree on the same types of
Mm-mm.
names.
Yeah.
So it was the one name that both of us loved.
Yeah.
So
Naming
we'll
a
see.
human is so hard and so much
Literally so
pressure.
hard.
I think about it all the time. I'm so happy with Tate's name. I think it's perfectly fits him. It's so cute. It's so short. I just really love it. But there's still some times where I'm like, was that the right name?
Yeah.
Because it's just
Yeah.
like so much pressure to name a person, you know
Literally
what I
so much
mean?
pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we first got married, I showed him, I don't know if you, like every girl in the world has a
Yes.
list of baby names on their phone.
Yes, I do.
I
Yep.
showed him that list. I was like, I love these names. And he's like,
Mhm.
uh, I don't like any of these. I'm
Of
like, what?
course. Great.
Dang it.
That's been my problem with
Yeah.
Thomas recently because we want more kids, and if we have a girl, we know her name, we've agreed on it. I've had her name since I was like a teenager,
Yeah.
and he likes it. But the boy name, like if we have another boy, I mean, every day I'm like, what about this? He's like, no. I'm like, what about this? He's like, no. So I'm like, but he's just, or if we have another boy, he's just not gonna have a name because at this
No,
point we can't agree. So
they're all just going to be Mason for us
yeah, yep.
because
Mason
like,
one, Mason two.
yeah.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
the same. We have girl names picked out, but guy
Yes.
names are so much harder.
Totally.
Anyways, okay. So his name is Mason.
Mhm.
I also have two dogs that are just chilling.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I went to Virginia Tech. I graduated in 2018 with degrees in creative writing and literature.
Ooh, cool.
And after I graduated, I was a missionary and a teacher in Uganda for a couple
Wow.
years while my husband was in his Air Force training.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of did our own long distance separate things for a couple years. And then
Uh-huh.
I came back a little earlier than I was planning because of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and we got married earlier than expected, which was like silver lining of that whole
Yeah.
pandemic situation,
Yeah.
and moved to Del Rio, which, if you know anything about Del Rio,
I
it's
don't.
in the middle of nowhere,
Ooh.
Texas,
Okay.
hottest place in the world.
Yikes.
Uh, just desert. There is nothing to do there.
Mm.
The people are amazing. Like
Mm-hmm.
we had a really good community there, but there is truly nothing. It
Ooh.
is 3 hours from San Antonio, but 10 minutes from Mexico. So it
Oh.
is out
Oh.
there. It's
Yeah.
out there.
Out there. Totally.
Yeah. So when I first moved, I really wasn't doing anything. Like he was
Mm-hmm.
really busy with training still, and I hadn't gotten a job yet because I had just moved there.
Mm-hmm.
And October of 2020 is when I decided to create the Victory Collective.
Mm.
So I was like, well, this is, and we'll get into it more with my story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, I'm literally not doing anything. Everyone is in lockdown right now still.
Right.
Um, so let's just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. You're like, I want to do something, so we're gonna do it. Like, I
Yeah.
love that. And so you've had it since 2020. That's incredible. That's like, and it's grown so much, and like the
Yeah.
community you have there is like so so great. That's really cool. And then, did you start it just yourself, or like has Katie always been there? Because I know like a couple people were
Yep.
doing it.
With
So
Katie.
yeah,
Hmm.
cool. That's so awesome. That's so
Yeah.
awesome. What led you? So let's just go ahead and get into your story then. So like,
Ah.
obviously, I know your experience with porn had like
Mhm.
led you to starting this
Yeah.
group. But like, what like just to start from the beginning? Tell
Yeah.
us how you were exposed, when it happened, like just all the things.
Yeah. So way back when I was 13 years old, just a
Wow.
little baby,
Yeah.
I got my first boyfriend. I was
Mm-hmm.
in eighth grade, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just one of those, like, probably lasted a couple weeks, but he was
Totally.
like my best friend, and we just started dating. And I was absolutely terrified to do anything physical with him, which was
Mm-hmm.
like existing near him, like holding his
Totally.
hand.
Totally. Oh no,
Anything.
when you're 13, your boyfriend is just your texting boyfriend, like
Yes,
or your IMing boyfriend. Like
exactly.
you don't look at them in person.
You
It's
don't
like
touch,
no,
yeah. You definitely don't touch them.
no.
But I was so scared, and it got me thinking about like how I was gonna have to kiss a boy one day. Not
Mm,
maybe not him, but like
right.
my
At
future
some
husband.
point. Yeah.
At some point, I
Yeah.
was gonna have to kiss somebody, and that terrified me.
Hmm.
And so I turned to YouTube, which is a
Mm,
great choice.
yeah.
And I would watch romance, like scenes from romance movies, like
Hmm.
The Notebook, like the kiss scene at the end,
Hmm.
and just very innocently
Yeah.
trying to
I was about to
learn.
say this is so like pure and innocent. You're just like a little 13-year-old girl who's like, I
Right.
want to kiss a boy and I don't really know if I can talk to anybody about this or have any. I don't know if my friends are doing it, so I'm just gonna like go to my computer because that's what everyone does and just like see what I can find. Just like
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
pure and innocent.
No, yeah, no bad intentions. It was literally just I'm scared to kiss a boy one day, so let's
Right.
learn.
Right.
But because of the content I was searching for, they have the suggested YouTube videos on the side of the screen. And
Hmm.
so I would just click through them, and most of them were just movies and, what
Right.
I had been watching. But I clicked on one and it was a video of two girls kissing and they were topless.
Mm.
And it
Just on
immediately,
YouTube.
just
Just
on
on
YouTube.
YouTube. That's
Yep.
insane.
Just within this content, like movie
Hmm.
content that I was watching. So not even
Hmm.
searching for anything
Yeah.
that would have really like led me to that. But it immediately just locked onto my brain.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like this is different. This is
Hmm.
new. This is kind of exciting, kind of scary.
Right.
Let's look a little deeper into this.
Yeah.
And so I started just looking for a little bit more intense content, not just
Hmm.
kissing scenes in movies, but I was
Yeah.
looking for makeout videos and
Mm.
like girls kissing and that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
this is not something, like I said, I was scared to even hold my boyfriend's hand. Like,
Right.
this is not something I was really interested in my life outside of the computer.
Right.
But it was just new and exciting and just immediately planted a seed in my mind.
Yeah.
Um, and so I started watching that kind of content on YouTube, not
Mm.
at all telling anyone I was doing that.
Did you have a phone or was it a computer? Like, was it a shared computer at your house? Like, what was
Yeah.
that
This was
situation?
my laptop. I got a
Mm.
laptop in eighth grade and
Mm.
I literally just used it. I had this spelling bee game,
Uh-huh.
which is so dorky,
Yeah.
but that's pretty much the extent of what I used it for because I didn't
Gotcha.
have, I think I got Facebook at like the end of eighth grade,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
didn't really have social media.
Right.
Really, I had access to YouTube because you don't need
Hmm.
like to make an account.
Yeah.
But pretty much I didn't use it for too much, but I did have a
Yeah.
laptop.
And
And
so I guess your parents were like not checking on it or anything.
mm-mm,
Like, yeah.
no,
No,
and
my parents never asked to look at my phone or never asked to look at my computer, not one time. So,
no,
yeah.
no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And
Our
I'll get
children will be different. Anyways.
oh 100%. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
And my mom is even like aware of it now. Like we'll get to
Hmm.
that later, but
Yeah. They just did, I truly think our parents just didn't know so many things and they were just doing
oh,
the best that they felt like they could do,
yes.
you know?
They had no idea. Like my
Yeah.
mom talks so much about how she didn't even understand what Wi-Fi was.
Yeah.
And I
Same.
got an iPod Touch later. Well,
Hmm.
I'll continue and
Okay.
get
Yeah.
there.
So then we're jumping to it, but.
Yeah, so it was on my computer.
Hmm.
And eventually, very quickly, I became desensitized to the content I was finding on YouTube.
Hmm.
Because there was some filters, like
Yeah.
obviously not
Yeah.
a ton if that video was on there, but some
Right.
filters. So I got to the point where I really wasn't getting that rush that I was getting
Mm.
from the original content that I was
Mhm.
watching. So I decided to Google the word porn.
Mm.
I have no idea where I heard that word or
Yeah, I was
how I
gonna.
even knew what that was going to lead me to.
Right.
But I knew that it had something to do with what,
Mhm.
that rush that I wanted to get.
Right.
So I Googled the word porn and just clicked on the first link that popped up.
Mm.
And I remember literally saying out loud, "This is awesome." And
Mm.
thinking back now, I'm like, no, little
Yeah.
Amanda, like that was
Right. Right.
so, but I was just,
Yeah.
it was every feeling in the book. It was
Right.
nervousness. I knew that I was doing something wrong. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't want my mom to find out. Like, I didn't want
Right.
her to walk in.
Right.
But then I was also excited about it, and it was this
Mhm.
new world that had just opened
Yeah.
up before me. Um,
Right.
and so I started watching porn like
Mhm.
every day, multiple
Wow.
times a day. It very quickly got to the point where the first year probably of me watching porn,
Mhm.
no, I wasn't talking about it. No one knew I was doing this.
Mhm.
And I didn't feel any remorse. I
Mm.
just did it with not feeling like it had any consequences on
Yeah.
me.
Because at this point you're still 13, 14, right? You said like for the
Hmm.
first year. So still
Yeah.
13, which is so baby.
So
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
And probably a year in, I just realized, I think I tried to stop. I was like,
Mhm.
I don't think this is good. Um, I I had been raised in a Christian family, but it wasn't
Mhm.
until 10th grade that I really accepted Christ.
Mhm.
And at church camp, go church
Mm.
camp.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but it was around that time that I was really starting to develop my own relationship with the Lord that I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I don't think
Mhm.
that He wants me to be doing this. So I
Yeah.
tried to stop and I couldn't.
Mhm.
I physically felt like I would try and just everything in me would pull me back to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like something is wrong. Like this is not
Right.
good.
Right.
So I did actually send an email to my mom and I told
Oh.
her that I had clicked on a viral link that opened
Mm-hmm.
up a bunch of porn websites. So
Uh,
I was trying to get her to block it
yeah.
without admitting that I had been looking for it.
Yeah.
So she did something, like I don't know what she did, but
Right.
she did
Yeah.
something. But I was too nervous to
Mm-hmm.
test it, like
Yeah.
in case she put a filter or something on it.
Right.
And so it got a little better. I wasn't watching it. And then
Mm-hmm.
for Christmas, I got an iPod Touch.
Mm. Wait,
And
what did your mom ever ask you, like, did you watch those videos, how you felt about it, or was she just like, oh yeah, these are probably bad, let me just go remove it or whatever? Like
yeah,
she didn't.
she was so sweet. She was like, "I'm
Mm,
so sorry that this is out there and that there
mm,
are bad people and you had to
mm-hmm.
be exposed to this." And
Yeah.
she was super sweet about it and really just really sad that I had been
Mm-hmm.
exposed to that.
Yeah.
But she had no idea. I think in my email I included like
Mm-hmm.
it's like I felt drawn back to it, so I tried to like stay off of my computer for a while, which
Mm,
was true. I did
yeah.
try to do that. Um, so again, I was trying a roundabout way
Yeah.
of like telling her, "Hey, this has
Right.
affected me," but I
Right. I
didn't
think
want
that's
to admit
incredible that you did that though, like to ask your mom to help. Like that's
it was
huge as a
literally terrified.
14-year-old though. Like to
Yeah.
do that, that's like says a lot about the environment also that your parents like had for you, that it was like a safe place for you to even like
Hmm.
bring this up. Because I know I'm sure a lot of us were like terrified of our
Yeah.
parents and didn't maybe feel like we could talk about those things. So even the fact that you a little bit felt like you could, I think that's
Yeah.
like huge and a testament to like your parents as well.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
they're amazing.
Yeah. You
Um,
got an iPod.
I got an iPod, and
Hmm.
that's where my mom talks about now. She was like, I had no idea. I thought an iPod was just music,
Uh,
but an iPod Touch had Wi-Fi
Had
and you could
Wi-Fi.
go on the internet.
Yeah.
And she had no idea. She thought she
Right.
was just giving me the new iPod.
Right. Thought
And
it was a good
so,
thing. Like, oh yeah, you get this iPod. That's great. She didn't.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
she had no idea that it even had access to internet. And so it was the easiest access to
Yep.
porn because I could
Totally.
just bring it into the bathroom and delete
Yep.
my search history and
Hmm.
just no consequences, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so I picked it back up, but this time I felt so much shame. Like
Mm.
for that first year of watching it, I really didn't even think about it. I just did it.
Yeah.
But now I think it was because I now had a relationship with Christ. I knew what
Hmm.
I was doing was not honoring him, it wasn't honoring
Yeah.
me or the people in these videos. And so after I would watch it, I would just feel so much shame. And
Yeah.
I 100% believed I was the only girl to struggle with porn.
Mm-hmm.
100, not
Totally.
even a little doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
I
It
was
was just
convinced I
you.
was alone.
Yeah.
And so that was worse because I
Right.
was not trying to tell anyone that I
Mm.
was doing this because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, they're gonna look at me like I'm disgusting and weird and something's
Yeah.
wrong with me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that continued for all through high school,
Mm.
all through high school until I
Mm-hmm.
got to college. Um, I told God that I wouldn't tell anyone about this,
Mm.
that if he was gonna heal me from this, it was gonna be between me and him, and he was
Mm.
gonna have to do this by himself.
Yeah.
Um, yep, that was not his plan.
Yep. I believe that. Yep. Yeah.
Thankfully. So yeah, freshman year of college, oh no, actually backtrack. I did write Katie. So Katie and I became best friends in ninth grade.
Mm. Okay.
Um,
Cool. Oh wow. So
and
you guys have been friends for so long.
yeah, and yeah, well, I think this year is like our 15-year friend anniversary or something.
Wow. That's so special.
So that's pretty fun. So we became best friends in ninth grade. Sometime like junior or senior year of high school, I decided to write her a letter. I
Mm-hmm.
tried telling her that I struggled with this. I wrote her this long letter, and I ended up throwing it in the river that was behind our house
Oh no.
because I
Like you were
was
so close. You were like,
I
I
was
can almost do this. Yeah.
I know, I was so close. And we've talked about it now, and she was like, if you had given me that letter junior year of high school, I don't know if I would have said me too. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know if I would have been
Totally.
ready to open up. So it was really God's timing, like
Yeah.
when it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So freshman year of college, we went to two different colleges, and we had this big worship night on campus. And I finally just felt a little bit of peace about
Mm.
telling someone. I was
Yeah.
not not beating this on my own.
Right.
And so God finally gave me a little hint of peace. And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. Like
Right.
I'm
I
just
can
gonna
do it.
text Katie.
Yeah.
So I texted her this novel of a text message,
Hmm.
and I ended it with, I understand if you don't want to be my friend anymore. I just had to tell you,
That
which
literally
which
brings tears to my eye. Like I'm literally tearing up.
shatters my heart. Like thinking about that, I
Wow.
felt that way about my best friend, that she would just
Right.
all of a sudden abandon me.
Right. Literally
Um,
brings tears to my eyes.
it's so sad. It's so
Yeah.
sad to think other people are also feeling that way too right now.
Right.
But she texted me back and said, I am literally crying right now because I'm in the exact same situation.
Wow. I have
I was
chills.
at I was at Jamba Juice just in
Jamba Juice.
London, just
Not
literally
the Jamba
straight,
Juice. Oh my God.
straight about to cry. I was
Yeah.
like shook,
Yeah.
and she was going to a concert, so she was in the car with a bunch of
Oh,
people.
oh my gosh. And y'all are
Well,
having like this revolutionary moment in your friendship and you're at Jamba Juice and she's going to a concert.
yeah,
And it's like, wait, my whole world just like opened up and turned upside down at the
gosh,
same time, you know?
yes, and literally just the weight that we both felt lifted off of our
So lifted.
shoulders,
Totally.
of being like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Like
Right.
there are other girls who struggle with this.
Definitely.
So, gosh, yeah, when she got back from the concert, we talked on the phone for
Hmm.
hours. And we were
Yeah.
like, what do we do with this information?
Right.
Like, this is a
Totally.
whole, our world has just been changed.
Right.
Um, so we tried things. We didn't know what we
Hmm.
were doing. We
Yeah.
tried to keep each other accountable. We would like send Bible verses to each other.
Hmm.
Um, we used a lot of fear tactics, which is
Yeah.
not what I recommend. We would be like, okay, if you watch porn, you have to give me $1. Or if you watch porn, like you
Yeah.
have to tell your dad, or like
Oh,
someone you really don't want
that's
to know.
terrifying. Oh
I
God.
know. Well, we just kind of like threatened each other basically,
Yeah.
and threatened
Which I want
ourselves.
to say all of this is so still, I feel like so pure intention because you're like, we're just trying the best that we can do and we have no idea what we're doing. And this is like, but we're just going to try everything that we can. And
Yeah.
clearly some of it, a lot of it probably didn't work. But it, again,
Yes.
it's just like your heart is in the right place of like, we just want to overcome this. And now we know that fear tactics are not the right way. And
Yes.
later in the episode, we'll talk about some more positive, practical
Yes.
tools. But
Yeah.
it just sounds like it was so pure of like, we just want to overcome this and
We
this is what
just
we think
want
we're
to,
gonna do. Yeah.
yeah, just attempting everything. And honestly, like looking back too, I'm happy that we did that because it revealed so much about God to us and
Mm,
just like his heart for us. Like,
yeah.
you're going to use these fear tactics, but now I'm going to show you like there is no fear in love. And
Mm,
it got me to
mm,
that point of like truly believing that.
yeah.
And so I feel like it was a good thing that we had to go through all of those things
Hmm.
first because it brought us to who God actually is and what he wants for
Totally.
us. Um, so we tried everything, didn't work.
Yeah.
And like I said, we went to two different schools. So I felt like I needed somebody physically in front of me
Yeah.
talking to me because it was so easy to lie to Katie through the phone. Just be like,
Definitely.
no, I didn't watch porn today. And
Right.
same with her.
Yeah.
So I told my Bible study leader sophomore
Wow.
year of college.
Hmm.
And she was so sweet. And she really stands out to me because she was one of the very few girls who also did not struggle with porn.
Mm,
Most of the people I told throughout college also
hmm.
did
Wow.
struggle.
Yeah.
And so my Bible study leader didn't, but it was so refreshing because even though she didn't, she still met me with so much grace
Yeah.
and love
Totally.
and was just like, okay, like let me help in
Hmm.
whatever way I can. Like you're
Yeah.
not condemned.
Right.
You're not weird or gross or anything.
Right.
So she bought me Crystal Raynaud's book, Dirty Girls Come Clean,
Hmm.
which was like the one resource for girls out there at that
Yeah.
time. And it was the first time I had actually sat down. It has a bunch of reflective questions in it
Mm,
and other testimonies as well. So I
hmm.
was reading these testimonies that sounded so similar to my own
Mm,
and to Katie's.
hmm.
There's just so much like the enemy is not creative, he just does
Yeah.
what works.
Right.
And so all of our stories kind of sound very similar.
Yeah.
And um, so it was the first time I was reading other women's testimonies and actually
Hmm.
processing what I was going through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then over the next, like the course of my college
Hmm.
days, I told 15 girls.
Hmm.
And it was friends, small group leaders,
Yeah.
small groups that I was leading,
Mm-hmm.
just a bunch of people who just the Lord prompted me to tell.
Yeah.
And 12 of those girls also struggled with porn.
Wow. Wow.
And so it was a big
Wow.
chunk.
Yeah.
of-
No, that's a lot. Yeah.
and Katie was having a similar experience over
Mm.
at her college.
I was just gonna ask. I was like, what was hers like? Was she telling people, and everybody
Yeah.
was like, "Me too." Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So super similar. And we just realized, oh my gosh, everyone is struggling with this, but no
Right.
one's talking about it.
Right.
And so right from the start, we have really bonded over the verse Esther 4:14 says, perhaps you were born for such a time as this.
Mm.
And we thought like, what if God made us friends for this
Mm.
moment
Yeah.
that we
Oh,
can share
true.
with one another and also help other girls who are struggling with this.
Yeah.
So from day one, we've been like, we were made to help other girls get over this.
Totally. Yeah.
But we had a lot of work to do in our own
Mm.
healing. So
Mm-hmm.
we worked on that. Um, and we had no idea. We were like, maybe we'll write a book, maybe we'll have a
Mm-hmm.
women's conference. I don't know what, but
Yeah.
like we'll do
We'll do
something.
something. Yeah.
And so that the something is the Victory Collective. Fast
Mm-hmm.
forward to 2020,
Yeah.
when we were both just in lockdown, quarantined.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how about we just start an Instagram? Like,
Yeah.
let's just start one. So we were just
Right.
brainstorming names and um, we I made an Instagram but kept it private for about a month and was just
Mm.
uploading content to it so that when I
Mm-hmm.
did go public, there would be content.
Right.
We didn't know what we were doing. We kind of
Oh,
went
yeah.
in messy. But the Lord has been so cool and so faithful through it all
Mm-hmm.
and just grew it so
Yeah.
fast. And
Oh, yeah.
there was this one little season where Katie, after we had gone public and everything, Katie was like, I think I'm going to make a reel. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do one of the lip syncing reels for the first time. And
Yeah.
we were both really nervous to like get in front of the camera.
Definitely.
And yeah, it's scary for the first time. And so she made one. And like the next day, we had like hundreds of messages and
Mm-hmm.
thousands more followers. Like it just
Mm-hmm.
kept going and going and going.
Mm-hmm.
And so many girls were reaching out saying like, wait, I didn't know other girls
Yep.
struggled with this. Like, thank you for this.
Right.
And it just like exploded.
Yeah.
And we were
Yeah.
just absolutely mind blown. This was beyond
Right.
all expectations.
Totally.
And then it's just been growing from there and it's been so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's because it really is one of those things that, like, anytime you hear porn, it's always attached, like, oh, that's a boy's problem. Boys don't
Yep.
watch porn. It's like when you're at the youth groups, like, and they separate boys and girls. They're telling girls how to cover up and they're telling boys
Yep.
not to watch porn. That's all it
Yep.
is. It's like, don't watch porn, and girls, you have to cover your bodies up. No one ever spoke to me about watching porn. That is not
No.
something that I have ever watched or struggled with, but but still, no one ever spoke to me about it. If I was struggling, nobody definitely was asking me about it. No one had asked me at all if I had ever watched it or if that was a struggle with me. It was definitely like, nope, that's what boys do. Like, that's all it was ever talked about, is that's what boys do, and that's what,
Yeah.
and I would also hear that's what every boy does as well,
Yes.
which I also
Also
don't like.
damaging.
It's very
Yeah.
damaging, because yes, a lot of boys struggle with it, but we also don't need to just like automatically attach porn to boys. Like, that's not fair to them. And because if they think like, oh, every boy does it, then I'm just going to do it too. I'm like, that's how the
Yep.
cycle keeps going. That's how the
Yep.
cycle keeps going. It doesn't break it. So it shouldn't be attached to any gender, because definitely, so many people struggle with it, but we shouldn't set people up in that way as well. So when did you like finally get like free of this addiction?
2019 was the last time that I watched porn. I have no idea when in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
For me, tracking, like some people think that tracking streaks for them is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And like for some people it might be. For me, it was not because I
Yeah.
focused way more on the failures than
Mm.
on the victories that I had with that.
Yeah.
And so
I
I gave
totally
up
get that.
gave up that practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea when, but I know it was before I got engaged, and I got engaged in December of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And so somewhere in 2019.
Yeah.
And so it took a while from telling
Mm-hmm.
Katie to being free. It was 6 years. 6 years
Wow.
went by.
Yeah.
And it was 6 years of I learned to practice and be very bold with confession. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a huge change for me. And I think I
Yeah.
needed to walk through that
Yeah.
of being able to repeatedly admit, like, I am still struggling with this. This is
Mm-hmm.
still a big challenge for me to overcome. So I need
Yeah.
to repeatedly like lay this down at God's feet. I need to repeatedly bring in my community so I don't go back to isolation. And
Right.
um, so throughout college and yeah, from the first time I told Katie
Mm-hmm.
to 2019 when I last watched
Yeah.
it, it was just so much growth and so much learning and
Right. I think so many people are, when they're stuck in this addiction, and I'm sure you probably felt this way, that you were just hoping, like, that you're waiting for, like, that one thing to change and, like, you would just never do it again. But I
yeah.
think the testament is, like, that may not happen. Like, it took 6 years to get to that point, and then it sounds like one day you just were, like, just never watched it again, you know? And I think it's, like, encouraging to people who are in that boat who probably feel like, this is just always going to be my story. This is always going to be my story. I'm waiting for this one thing. It's like, no, there's so many practical tools and just like you said, confession practices and just like praying and desperately asking the Lord to help heal you. It
Yeah.
takes time. It might not just be like one day. There's like one magic, like this app stopped me from doing it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. I did think like, oh, after I told Katie, like confession, you're supposed to like heal
Hmm.
from confession. And
Hmm.
I just thought it was immediately going to take away the temptation, and that's
Yeah.
not at all what happened. I mean, this is can be not always, but can be an addiction, and for me, it
Hmm.
was.
Yeah.
And so my mind had to heal from that. Um,
Totally. And
and
I'm glad that you, oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'll
no,
say what I'm saying.
please don't.
Well, I was going to say, I'm glad that you said it can be an addiction. It might not be, because one question I actually just got on Instagram was
Mm,
what constitutes like a porn addiction versus just like watching porn? What would you say the
yeah,
difference of that is?
yeah. I mean, it's just like how some people are more prone to alcohol addiction. Some people can
That's
drink
what I was
it and
thinking.
it doesn't have any effect. I can have a glass of wine and I don't
Mhm.
feel that craving to watch more.
Right.
Um, but other people, they feel that like, oh, I need to
Hmm.
keep watching. I feel that, or I need to keep consuming alcohol.
Yeah.
The same thing with porn. Some people can watch it. I know a lot of people have been exposed to it at some point accidentally, and they're
Hmm.
like, oh, I don't want to see this again. And
Yep.
it just does not sit in their mind.
Right.
And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what like for some people why that is and
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
it's
I don't either.
I'm sure there's science behind it.
We don't know it. This is not a science podcast.
We don't know the science,
Yeah. Yeah.
but some people do, and I'm
Mhm.
sure counselors and trauma
Totally.
counselors and there are so many things that
Hmm.
probably, especially like a lot of kids if they've experienced trauma in childhood, like it has to do
Hmm.
with their trauma, and so there's
Right.
so much that goes into the brain that I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, But I will say one kind of myth that comes up a lot is,
Mhm.
oh, if it's not an addiction, then it's not bad. Like I can
Yep.
watch it. I can watch it once or twice.
And it's
If I
fine.
watch it once a month, like that it's fine because it's not an addiction, and that is
Right.
definitely a myth for a lot of
Totally.
reasons.
Totally.
Um, yeah, but for
What would
me, the
what would you
addiction.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, for you, the addiction.
The addiction part was the fact that I tried to stop and I couldn't. Like
Hmm.
physically, it consumed my thoughts. When I wasn't watching it, I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
It took me away from
Hmm.
the people around me. I would deny phone
Right.
calls because I was about to watch porn. Like I would
Mm.
choose it over so many other things and over
Yeah.
relationships um and so there is an addiction cycle, and
Right.
this can become an addiction. But for
Right.
some people, it's either nothing, it doesn't have an effect on
Hmm.
them really, like it doesn't latch on. Some
Right.
people, it's a compulsion, and so
Right. And what would you say some of the reasons why it's bad is? I mean, I feel like I've talked about it, and sometimes it feels like it's obvious, but I really don't think it's obvious to people because it's so mainstream, it's so normal, or like no, quote normal for people to watch. In society, people are like, "Oh
yeah,
yeah, of course everyone watches porn. Like, what's the big deal?" So, what would you say is the big deal about it? We're definitely on the same page with this, but I even have questions from people in this community asking about it, which I'm so glad that people are asking about it because if you don't know, then you don't know and you think it's fine,
right,
you don't know the consequences. So I'm so glad that like people are asking questions and know that this is like a really safe place to ask those questions and with
right,
your community as well.
yeah. Okay, where to begin?
I know. I know. Yeah, just a
I
couple
think
because we could this could be an entire episode. So
it
just a
really
couple of
could.
things. Yeah, maybe some of the big
And
ones.
yeah, and this is not, want to be very clear, this is not shaming people who
Correct.
believe these things or are still stuck in it. But I think it's very important to know that it's it's both harmful to you and to your mind and your
Mm-hmm.
relationships, but also the people in the
Well,
porn industry.
yes. Yes.
Um, and so I'm gonna start there
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's something that people don't really think about,
Right.
especially with this idea of, oh, but I only watch it every so often, so it's
Mm-hmm.
not really affecting my mind or my relationships, which it is,
Right.
but they don't think that it's having that much of an effect, but it is
Mm-hmm.
on the people. Every single time you watch a porn video, you're objectifying the people that are in the porn video. Like
Correct.
these are human beings, but you're treating them as objects
Objects for your
and
pleasure.
for your pleasure.
Because that's the
And
sole reason you're watching it. There, it's not
yes,
anything else. It's for
mm-mm,
pleasure.
yeah. And so, starting the Victory Collective, I've learned a lot more about the porn industry,
Oh, I'm sure.
and it is wicked.
Yeah.
It's wicked. It's so sad. I think the thing I've heard a lot of testimonies from like ex-porn performers, people who have
Mm-hmm.
gotten out of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Fight the New Drug has a lot of information
Yes,
on
I was
it.
just thinking about them. Yeah. And I
That's
love
a
that their
great,
perspective is not from a Christian perspective
yeah.
because I think it's so important for even non-Christians to understand the
Yes.
harmfulness of it. And some people who are not Christians would see us talking about it and be like, well, that's just like a Christian thing
This
and
is a
just like
Christian.
turn it off, you know? And so I'm so glad there's space for both of,
Yeah.
us and then the fight of the new drug.
Yeah. I think the thing for me that has just wrecked my heart and it brought me to my knees one time when I was just vacuuming and I was listening to a Fight the New Drug podcast. Consider Before Consuming is their
Mm-hmm.
podcast name. I was listening to it and it was an ex-porn performer and he was saying he personally has known 30 people to commit suicide after being in this industry. 30.
Oh my God,
And
that literally brought me chills and tears to my eyes.
he
30.
said their videos are still out there, still in circulation.
Oh my
I
God.
was wrecked.
Yeah.
I sobbed. It brought me to my knees.
Ooh, yeah.
Literally emotional right now.
Yeah.
Because just thinking about like, oh my gosh,
Right.
how many videos have I consumed?
Mm-hmm.
And the person, sorry, now
No, it's
get,
okay. It's okay.
I'm on my period, so that's probably
Definitely
why.
adds to it for sure. For sure.
Dude, and being a mom, I don't know if y'all way more
Yes.
emotional than it was before.
So much more emotional. Oh my gosh. I can cry at the drop of a hat now since being a
Dude, I
mom.
know.
Yeah.
But just, man, it wrecked me. And I just like, just asked God for forgiveness again because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
how many children of yours have literally taken their lives and we're still using them?
Right. Right. And they got to
Just,
a point where they felt like they just had no worth because this is all they were doing and just how damaging that is
yeah.
to them. Yeah. Yeah.
And so just thinking about that, yeah, that wrecked me. And then just the whole idea of consent within the porn industry too is a big
Mm-hmm.
myth where
Totally.
people are like, no, they're employees. They're getting a salary from this. They're choosing this life. So it's not wrong.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, first of all, um, a lot of them are not choosing this life. They've
Right.
been exploited into it.
Right.
But also, if they have been, a lot of porn performers come from really broken homes and get to the
Yes.
point where they feel so vulnerable and so lost that
Mm-hmm.
this is what they're choosing.
Right.
They
And
don't
the
feel
thing
like
like
they
it's their
have
only
another.
option.
Yes, yeah. And then as far as consent too, like even if they've signed a consent form, like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
consent to this scene, a lot of times when they get to the scene, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that they haven't consented to, but
Right.
they're either being threatened or
Right.
they don't feel like, I like the phrasing of consent is only consent if yes is an option.
Right.
And for
Yes.
them, a lot, it's not an option. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, they're saying yes, but that really isn't, it's
Consent.
not a true yes. It's not true
Right.
consent.
Right.
And so, just thinking about, okay, even if you watch porn once a year, that one porn video you watch
Mm-hmm.
might be a non-consensual porn
Mm-hmm.
video. It might be someone who has already taken their own life.
Right. And it also could potentially be a minor because there's so
Oh, yeah.
so many minors involved who
Hmm.
say that they're 18, but they're definitely not.
Oh, yeah.
And it is just heartbreaking for so many
Yeah.
reasons, and that definitely is
Yeah.
one of them too.
And even if it's none of those things, you are
Right.
still objectifying that
Objectifying.
person. that child of
Absolutely.
God that's on the screen. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
so
No,
many
that's good.
reasons.
Yeah, no, I think we can end with that one for that question just because I feel like there's so many other ways, other things we can go into, but I
Yeah,
really think that objectifying is such a big one. Me as Christians, I mean, everybody in general, but especially with Christians, we're called to see our brothers and sisters the way Jesus sees them
yes,
and not objectifying them.
yeah.
And that's all that is objectifying. So do you feel like more women now are telling their stories? I mean, definitely your community is showing that because I still feel like in the world, I'm still hearing like people making comments about, oh, it's just a man's problem. It's just a man's problem. Like, are you feeling like that is changing? Like in the work that you're doing, are you seeing that that's changing?
It definitely is, and
Yeah.
it's so exciting, but it's still very heavily this is a man's problem. Like that's
Right.
still very much a myth within the church and just in the world, in
Yeah.
society. I
Right.
always think of the show Friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like I use that as an example of it's one of my favorite shows, but they do talk about porn a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
with Joey and Chandler, they just watch porn all the time and it's no big
Mm.
deal. But there was one episode where they found Rachel's like dirty book
Mm-hmm.
and they just made fun of her and they teased her
Wow.
and I'm like, so even in this secular just
Yeah.
shows,
Right.
is this idea that like, oh, men can watch it, but if women do, it's super weird.
Right. Right.
And then again, within the church, just pastors saying, like,
Mm-hmm.
men, if you struggle with porn,
Porn.
and never
Right.
really including women. So that is still very prevalent,
Yeah.
but it's also super exciting that so many more women are willing to share their stories.
Right. Yeah,
We
no,
now,
it's making an impact. I think when it's just being told that it's just men, I think that really contributes to women not sharing their stories and
oh, yeah,
not getting
100%.
help and staying in the dark because that's just I mean, they're already feeling shame and then you say, "Oh, it's just a man's problem." And then that just adds a whole nother layer of it's like, "Well, then I'm even more dirty or more wrong or more, a bad person because
Right.
if it's a man's problem, not mine." And again, it's like, well, I'm the only one doing it because it's not talked about that women struggle with it as well. So I know that we probably have girls who are listening to this episode for sure that are struggling with porn. And I know there's like so many things that you would say to her or like, steps to overcome this. But like maybe what's just like step one? Like they're watching
Yeah.
this and they're just are listening to this and breaking down. They're like, this is me, this is me. Like, what would you say step one is? Because I feel like if we can at least take one step, then that's like the hardest part sometimes. It's like getting
Yeah.
over the first step.
Yeah. Bring it into the light.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
step one, with both God and with another person.
Mm-hmm.
That is step one. And you don't need
Yeah.
to know what step two is. Like, you
Yeah.
don't. Like, I feel like so many people think that they need to have the whole plan, the whole
Yeah.
healing plan laid out. But like I said, with Katie and I, we were just guessing on what to do.
Right.
We had
Right.
no idea. Like, you don't need to tell, but the relief that you will feel telling a friend of yours who loves you, and loves Jesus, and
Mm-hmm.
is going to show you that grace, that relief is enough to just break down the shame. Like,
Yeah.
start breaking down the shame that you've been in for so long. And that is
Totally.
absolutely step one. Like, you do
Right.
not have to do this alone, and
Yeah.
you shouldn't feel like you have to do this alone. Like, you're not
I
a
yeah,
burden.
absolutely. And I love kind of the different ways you've mentioned talking to your friends. Like you said, you sent your mom an email. You said that you wrote a letter. Do you feel like I that's not even like things I would have thought of because in this day and age, it's like, oh, you just text your friend or you call your friend or you meet up. Like, but I like the idea of like maybe it seems too heavy to like send a text message or it seems too scary to like make a phone call. So I think even like a letter, like you said, could be a way to talk to your friends about it.
Oh, yeah. Do what you need to do just to get it out of your head.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a formal face-to-face sit down. I think that that can be helpful and remove a lot of shame if you're sitting across from your friend and like she still loves you. But yeah, send a text message. Like just be
Yeah.
like, hey, I even now, like if I have something to confess, sometimes I'll just shoot a text message and be like, hey, I have something kind of serious that I want to talk to you about. Like, do you have time this week to sit down? Just
Yeah.
so they can enter it in that headspace of like,
Right.
oh, this isn't like a funny thing. Like
Yeah, we're
we're
having a
having a serious
serious.
conversation.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
send that text.
Yes. What do you think? I think this is definitely probably this has been around for a long time, but I really feel like TikTok has brought the like porn in the form of romance novels, like the smut, like that is I feel like TikTok has really like
Yeah.
emphasized
Love that.
smut in these last couple of years. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I yeah, I saw this on the outline that you sent, and I was like,
Yeah.
God, I need to be thinking about this because um, it is very much a lot of people are like, well, porn is the problem, but smut isn't a problem because
Hmm.
it's not visual. You're not really objectifying a person because it's a character,
Hmm.
and there is a big, and I disagree with those things.
Hmm.
I think I think it's more important to look at the motive of why you're reading these things.
Hmm.
Same as why are you watching porn?
Totally.
It's not just a habit, but I do, it has the same kind of motivation as why people watch porn. There's
Yes,
some
exactly.
reason why why they're reading these books and wanting
Mhm.
to visualize and fantasize about these sex scenes that are in them.
Right.
And it takes you away from true intimacy with people.
100. That's exactly what I was going to say. You took the
Yeah.
words right out of my mouth.
hmm
Exactly. Exactly.
especially married women. A lot of
Yes.
married women will like, oh, I just read this, like it's not really
Hmm.
impacting anything, but it is like sex, and you talk about sex all the time in such
Hmm.
a healthy way, and sex is so much more about intimacy than
Hmm.
physical pleasure. Like that is the purpose of it, is to be intimate. And so
Totally.
when you're just dipping out on your husband to go read a
Hmm.
smut book and, take
Right.
care of yourself or like fantasize by yourself, it really
Right.
is impacting the way that you approach intimacy with your husband.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Totally.
so,
And I think also for people who are struggling with porn, it probably is a trigger, I would assume, because if you're reading
oh,
this, I'm
I
like,
can't
well, why
read
don't I go watch it?
I can't read those books. And
Yeah.
a lot of women too, their porn addictions start with erotic novels
Yeah.
or even romance novels, like even
Right.
the less, I guess the ones
Hmm.
that just have a few sex scenes. A
Right.
lot of women, like I said, with my desensitization to those makeout videos on
Hmm.
YouTube, it
Right.
happens with books too. And
Definitely.
you get to a point where, oh, that scene didn't trigger as much of a rush for me, so I'm
Hmm.
going to go to like erotic novels, and I'm going to
Right.
go to, and eventually it can escalate to, well, I'm actually going to watch porn.
Right.
And it does start escalating, and it
Yeah.
can happen with romance novels.
Totally. No, I definitely think it can. I think some people probably read it here and there and it's fine. There's definitely been some books that I've read when I was trying to get into books and I like finished it and I was like, that didn't really sit right in my spirit that
Mhm.
I just read that. Like
Mhm.
I was thinking about it at times when I wasn't reading it and I was like, that just does not no, like that's not really fair to my husband that I'm like think because also you're like you make up images in your mind when you're reading
Yeah.
this stuff and so you're thinking about these other people and I was just like yeah I don't and I haven't read any since because I was just like didn't love that like it's probably
Mhm.
because it's like it's probably fine and maybe some people don't have that conviction and I'm always going to tell people to like follow their convictions and if you don't have that conviction well but I do think there's still some harm in that and I'm not saying just like romance novels just on their own without sex or
Right.
without that part is bad. I definitely think there's I mean we watch love stories, we watch love movies,
Yeah.
like but I do think it's just like I have felt convicted and like to not watch any kind of movies with sex scenes in them. Like we don't
Yeah.
do that in our house. Like I don't want to even toe the line of like objectifying somebody
Yeah.
for my own pleasure, like I don't like I don't know. I just don't want to do it. So I just think as I've gotten older, we've put some of those boundaries, in our home,
Yeah.
and everybody's different with that, totally.
Yeah.
But
I
I
think,
got a couple questions about the romance novel, so I wanted to
yeah.
bring those up.
I think
Another,
also being aware, sorry to interrupt,
no,
being
no,
aware
go ahead.
of the books that you recommend to people too. Like you said,
Mm,
it can be a trigger for people who do struggle with porn. So
totally.
like I know my boundaries, and so I'm in a book club and they
Hmm.
recommended like the ACOTAR, like the A Court of
Oh,
Thorn and
uh huh.
Roses series. I know I'm not gonna read that because that would be really triggering for me.
Yeah.
And so I think just even if it doesn't trigger you, knowing
Hmm.
like, hey, you might have a friend who struggles with porn,
Yeah.
maybe don't recommend a book if it has a very graphic sex scene in it, and just being
Right.
aware that it affects other people
Right.
differently.
Totally. And like I will say, like I love watching Bridgerton. Love the show because I love the music and I do
Yeah.
love the romance story and the happiness. But I've scrolled past the sex scenes. Like I was
Yeah.
really thankful that last season there wasn't a lot of sex scenes. But like this past season there's a couple, and I'm like, nope, we just gonna scroll because I don't feel like I need to like watch that part, you know.
Yeah.
But and I don't know if you can really do that in a book. I don't know if you're like missing important information. Probably not. But I'm just like, like that's what I would do. I was like, I'm just gonna scroll past that a little bit because that's just like not something that I want to watch. I'm not missing anything by doing that, you know. Someone had a question that I thought that was really good for us to talk about is what do you do if you never feel as turned on or aroused as you do from porn, regardless of foreplay, toys, role play, etc. It's the video and audio stimulation.
Yeah, this I'm super happy you asked this question. I was
Yeah.
really hoping we would talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, where to begin? So this is a huge fear that a lot of women have, especially like single and dating and just like who are waiting for marriage. They fear that their brain is damaged, like porn has had a lasting impact on them, and they will never have a fruitful sex life with their husbands. They will never be able to have an orgasm with their husbands, like that porn has done like some permanent damage. And that's not the case. And
Yeah.
so that's an encouraging message for you all.
Right.
Especially like if you're a woman who you are having sex with your husband and you're like, I have not been able to orgasm. I have not had a lot of physical pleasure. Is it because I've watched porn in the past? And it does have an impact on your brain. Again, going back to that desensitization, science. This is the
Yes.
extent of the science I know.
Yeah.
Porn floods your brain with dopamine excessively, and it starts to alter your brain over time so that your dopamine threshold keeps getting higher and higher. So the content that you need keeps getting more aggressive and more
Yep.
intense. It's the same
Yep.
thing that happens with drug users.
Right. Right.
And that you just need more and you need more intense. And so at a certain point, things that still release dopamine, like sex with your husband, it doesn't have that same satisfaction because your brain is like, but my dopamine threshold is up here, and porn
Yeah.
is only releasing, or not porn, sex with your husband is only releasing a normal amount. But the good news is that just like your brain may have changed by watching porn, it can change back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just going to take a little time, and it's going to take pursuing intimacy with your husband. Like that is
Yeah.
the purpose of sex, is
Right.
intimacy with your spouse. And so it takes time, like being totally vulnerable right now. It took me like a year and a half to have an orgasm with my husband.
Wow. Yeah.
And I needed some counseling. I needed it wasn't even, I didn't have physical pain or anything,
Yeah.
but it was, and I had that fear. I was like, oh my gosh, my brain is damaged. I
Yeah.
did something to it because I watched porn for so long. But I had to learn how to communicate with him and how to actually connect, because porn was so easy. It just, I didn't have a fear of rejection. I didn't have to tell anyone what I liked or didn't like. It was just, I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And that's not the case with sex, because it takes two people and it's more about intimacy.
Right.
And I remember feeling, sorry if I'm going on a tangent right
No,
now.
no, this is great. Yeah.
I remember the first time I was able to have an orgasm with my husband. I remember feeling like that was not as physically pleasurable as what I was able to achieve with porn. But I would choose that a million times over
Yeah.
because it was intimate. And I
Right.
remember literally almost crying because I was like, this is what God designed. Like,
Yeah.
this is God's
This
purpose.
is it. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
actually connected to him. Like, I'm
Right.
connected to a person.
It's not just
And
physical. There's so much. It's so much
yes,
deeper than that. Yeah.
yes, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's beautiful. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, this is where it's at. Like, even
Yeah.
if it
Yeah.
wasn't as pleasurable, but the
Right.
more that we connected that way and practiced over time, then it got better.
Yes, because sex is a skill. It takes
Sex is a
time
skill.
to figure
Yes.
it out. To figure it out.
Regardless of if you
Oh.
watch porn or not. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that your story with that in particular is such like a story of hope for these women, and I love, or not, I love. Let me take that back. I was gonna say I love it took you a year and a half. I love that you got to that point,
Yeah.
because I think so many
Mhm.
people are like sitting there. I mean, this person writing in is I'm assuming feeling that way, and so it's just like a testament to like, okay, if you keep working on it and you keep taking time, it can happen for you, and
Mhm.
like there's so much hope in that. It wasn't necessarily an overnight thing. Because I do think so many people
Yeah.
are scared of that, and your story with this is just so inspiring and encouraging to those who are in that moment of like, okay, it may not happen tomorrow, because
Yeah.
we do have to do some rewiring of the brain. I
Yeah.
talk about rewiring your brain all the time and going from one path to the other, and it takes a long time to go from one path to the other. And so with this,
Yep.
like, you were going down the porn path for a long time and having that satisfaction, and it's just going to take some time to get to the other path of the
Yep.
intimacy and the closeness with your spouse, and over time it will happen. And
Yeah.
it takes some time, but you might be in this for the long haul, but there is hope at the end of
Yep.
the story. It's not just going to be this way forever.
Absolutely.
That's so powerful. That's so powerful. Well, let's end with some talking about some practical tools to help somebody, because
Mhm.
I know that practical tools are also super helpful, because if you're giving yourself access all the time, you're not setting yourself up for success. So,
Yep.
what are some practical tools that can help somebody struggling with this?
Yeah. So if you go to our website, thevictorycollective.net, we
Mm-hmm.
have a whole page called For Girls and Women, and it
Mm-hmm.
has a whole list of resources, and
Mm.
it's all resources by women for women,
Fantastic.
very women specific. So just scroll through that, and if you
Yeah.
find one that you like, but I personally still use Accountable to You.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we have a discount code that gives you a month free of that. It's also on our
Fantastic.
website
Yeah.
if you just want to try it out and see if it works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What
that has
is?
been,
Go ahead.
yeah. Did you say
Sorry.
what is it?
Yeah, I was gonna. I know what it is, but like, what is it?
Yeah.
Like an app that tells people, or what, or blocks you?
Mhm.
Like, what does it do?
Yeah, it's an app that you can get on all of your devices, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't block, but you pick a virtual accountability partner. So my
Mm-hmm.
husband is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so every week, I think you can set it for if you get notified every week, or like there are different settings.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets an email every week that says my search history.
Mm-hmm.
And he's immediately texted and given like a red flag if I search something inappropriate.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like sometimes I'm just doing a lot of times I'm doing research
I was
for
gonna
the
say
victory
what you're doing
collective.
now is just like research, so
And
that's
he's
probably hard.
but it has protected me over the past
Mm.
few years. Like when a temptation comes up and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm like really feeling triggered right now to go back to
Mm-hmm.
it, but I know I have that guardrail on my
Yeah.
computer still, and that's
Mm-hmm.
been so helpful.
Totally.
That one does require, though, telling someone
Yeah.
because they have to be able to receive your notification. But
Definitely.
it's so important. I think too a free resource because that one is like $6.99 a month,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is not bad. But a free
Yeah.
resource again requires you to tell somebody. But setting app limits on your phone, having like a
Mm-hmm.
friend change your screen time passcode, and
Mm.
blocking like
Yeah.
all the tempting apps, like
Yeah.
block Safari on your phone if that's what you
Mm-hmm.
use to watch porn.
Yeah.
Block Instagram, block TikTok.
Totally.
That was a huge game changer for me. Like my senior
Mm-hmm.
year, I didn't have Instagram and I couldn't re-download it because I
Yeah.
had a friend change that passcode.
Yeah.
And it's a free option and
Right.
it just gives you that physical room to
Totally.
when you don't have the willpower yet
Right.
to say,
Totally.
okay,
We've done that before when I've talked openly about Thomas having struggling with porn early on
yeah.
in our marriage, and deleting Twitter was like, because
Mhm.
Twitter does, I may not, no, actually I do social media for my job. Porn is all over Twitter. Like,
Yeah.
it is, I don't know if it's the easiest app, but in my, like, none of the clients that I have do work for have anything to do with that. Let me make that very clear. But it is all day, every day. I'm having to like close my eyes, cover my computer, and just hit
Oh my
block,
God.
block, block, block. Because I mean, the messages that it is insane. That and Instagram, like, and Instagram tries to block us. It's so frustrating.
Yes.
But no, that just not having the
Instagram.
apps on your phone, really. It seems like, yeah, duh, but it's also not, yeah, duh. Some people just need like the direct, like,
Yeah.
step one, let's do this, step two, you know?
Yeah, block the apps and also give it time too because one thing that I struggled with was I would block an app and then I would still be tempted. Like I could still recall the porn images in my head and I
Mm,
would like use that and then
yeah.
go, masturbate.
Right.
And so it wasn't like and then I would be like, oh, okay, if getting rid of Instagram doesn't help, I'm just gonna get it back. But
Mm,
then I would go back to porn. And
mm,
so just give it time. Like that's not your healing. Like you still
right.
have to do the work to heal.
Yeah.
But the longer you stay away from porn, the more you
Mm.
give your mind that space to heal.
Yeah, because it's
So,
not going to be immediate. It's
no.
really not. It's because there's a lot of time, like you said, and your brain has been wired a certain way, and it unfortunately just takes time to retrain those pathways in your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not impossible, and they're not alone. And let's
Yeah.
just end. Well, I said we're ending that. We'll end with one thing. What is something? I know there's a million things that you want to say to
Yeah.
people who are struggling with this right now, to those girls. But like, what's just one thing that you want to leave the listeners with who are struggling with this?
Yeah. I would say let your people love you.
Mm,
Let your people help you. Like they
hmm.
want to. You're not a burden to them.
Yeah.
You need help with this. Like
Hmm.
let people in. Shame is going to convince you that all of your friends are going to leave you and abandon you and
Hmm.
gossip about you, but
Hmm.
that's not true. Like if
Right.
they love Jesus and they love you, they're
Right.
not going to just dip out. And
Totally.
so give them that opportunity to show you that love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's so good. This episode, there were so many other things that we could have talked about. Like, I had so many thoughts, but we only had about an hour. So, and I want to respect your time. So, thank you so, so much for being a guest on the podcast today and being so honest and vulnerable and sharing your story. I know just people listening to this are going to be so impacted just by knowing that they're not alone and what they're going through is not going to be this way forever and that there's so much hope for healing and that Jesus loves them and they're not dirty and gross and all the things that, all the lies that they have been told and feel like they are. That's not true. So thank you so much for encouraging everybody today and sharing your story. Where can people follow the Victory Collective, your resources? Where is all that at?
Yeah. On Instagram, we are at the_victory_collective.
Mm-hmm.
And then thevictorycollective.net is our website. And
Mm-hmm.
then we respond to emails and DMs. So thevictorycollective@gmail.com or
Mm-hmm.
just DM us on Instagram. We'd be
Yeah.
happy to answer and pray for you and send you to the resource that might help you.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I will link all of that in the episode notes so that way it's very easy for you guys to click on that. But thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And thank you guys for listening. Make sure you go follow the Victory Collective and check out all their resources. Share their Instagram with somebody who you know needs it. Share their resources with your friend who needs it. If it's not you, if it's your friend, we all know someone struggling with this. So share, share, share. Because the more that it's brought to the light, the less room there is for shame. So,
Yep.
thank you guys for listening and hanging out with us today, and we will talk soon.